Hello, my name is Zach Erickson. Welcome to Recharge Psychology, the YouTube channel. This is my first video. I am a registered psychologist here in Edmonton, Alberta, and I specialize in ADHD, trauma, stress, all those sorts of things. My goal with this channel is just to give you useful tips, hopefully entertain you a little bit, and today we're going to talk all about self-compassion, which surprisingly is something that, as a dude, a lot of people may be surprised that that would be the very first thing that I talk about. So let's get into it. Stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm going to teach you a single question that is going to be one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself when you make mistakes as somebody who has ADHD. I want to start off with a story that happened right after high school for me. One of my very first jobs out of high school was as a prep cook at Tony Roma's restaurant in Lethbridge, Alberta. And for those of you who don't know, the prep cook is not the person who's on the line cooking, it's the person in the back, like slicing the onions for the onion rings, or part of my job was to cook the ribs, right? So if you take one of those huge, big old, I don't know, big pans of ribs, and of course when you buy ribs, they are already mostly cooked. They just like lather them in whatever barbecue sauce you want, at least at the time. And then you would put them on the grill. They'd kind of give them that sear, warm them up a little bit for you, but they'd been mostly cooked because they're slow cooked. And so I had this huge rack of ribs, and I kid you not, they were full racks of ribs with like 12 bones or whatever it is on them. These were pork ribs, and probably over a dozen deep. And you put whatever like smoke sauce, wrap it in tinfoil, the whole thing. I'm sure I probably signed an NDA 20 years ago. Come after me, Tony Roma's. People know how to cook ribs. Anyway, I forgot, and now at the time I didn't know that I had ADHD. Newsflash, I also have ADHD. It's part of how I became sort of an expert in ADHD. It was almost a survival tactic. But I didn't know at the time that I had ADHD. I was not diagnosed with ADHD until I was 24 and in university. And I forgot to set the timer. Now, for anybody who knows, now imagine over a dozen huge racks of ribs. Those things easily sell for, I don't know, a lot of money at the time, right? For a whole rack of ribs, that was a considerable amount of money, particularly a considerable amount of profit as well for the business. Totally forgot about, like, they're supposed to go in for, I don't know, let's just say an hour and a half. About 2.5 hours in, you start to smell this. And as soon as I realized what was going on, I was like, oh no, what have I done? Right? It's terrible. So I run over there and they are charred black. Okay? And I was horrified. Now, the boss was, anybody who's worked in a kitchen can imagine what the boss did, the kitchen manager. And right, like understandably so. Right? But the reality is, and the reason I tell this story is because in my experience, one of the most valuable things you can do when you have ADHD is learn how to fail gracefully. And what I mean by that is I screwed that up. Like that was a big problem. And for like 3 days afterwards, I think that the like head chef in the kitchen attempted to salvage the meat on those ribs. And they had some sort of weird charred rib soup or something as the house soup for a while, trying to salvage that. And it was a problem, right? Eventually I just realized this is not the job for me. There's a mix of a few different things. But I'm curious how many people out there, first off, have had a situation like that. I imagine I'm not the only one. But second, and more importantly, those kinds of situations can really hit your gut and really, hit your self-esteem if you let them. So what I've discovered is that we are very, very good. Now, I ripped myself apart. I felt terrible about that, right? And you probably have as well, like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why do I do this or whatever it is, right? I felt horrible. But the reality is I want you to imagine for a moment, and like I said before, here's a really valuable question that you can ask yourself. But before we get to that, I actually want to tell you the 3 pieces or the three components to self-compassion. This comes from Dr. Kristen Neff, and she is a psychology researcher who studied self-compassion and really did the work to define for us in a scientific sense what self-compassion actually is. And there are three different components, okay? Number one, the first thing that we have is self-kindness. Now, for each of these, there's a counterpoint. So for self-kindness, do not self-blame, do not self-criticize, be kind to yourself, right? If you wouldn't say something mean to somebody else, don't say it to yourself, right? Everybody makes mistakes. It is what it is. The second one is common humanity, right? So the flip side of this is isolation, or we see mistakes that we make as a reflection of ourselves, right? I'm such a screw up. I'm such an idiot. I am whatever, right? Instead of doing that, and this is actually something that is, and this is one of the things that can be really healing for a lot of people with ADHD, is lots of people with ADHD make mistakes like that. You know what? Lots of people struggle with remembering things, struggle with being forgetful, in my example, right? And I'm not an idiot. This is not a me problem. This is like, yeah, ADHD is hard to deal with, right? So that's number two. First one, be kind to yourself. Second one, find the common humanity, right? Lots of people go through difficult things in their life. The third one is mindfulness. Now, when we talk about mindfulness, the flip side of this is what we call over-identifying with emotion. Or in other words, when we feel, this is not just because you are feeling or you're trying to be kind to yourself and that you have self-compassion, doesn't mean that that situation is not going to suck. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard, right? Absolutely, it's going to be hard. It was so embarrassing, right? Every single person that I worked with knew how badly I screwed that up. Absolutely. And how big of it, like the smell of smoke out into the dining area at a Tony Roma's restaurant, right? Everybody knew, and it was embarrassing. But mindfulness is talking about your relationship with your own emotions. So instead of getting swept up in the emotion and feeling overwhelmed and, oh, I can't believe this, and really that emotion becomes our whole world, and the story that we tell ourselves becomes this whole world. Instead, we become mindful of it, right? We take a single step back is how I like to describe it. Just take a step back from your emotions and observe them. Notice that they are things that you are experiencing, the thoughts that you might be having, those are stories that you are telling yourself, but they are not you. You are, this is a mistake that you maybe have made, but it's okay to feel that way. And actually to learn over time, mindfulness is one of the best things that you can do to help develop emotional resilience and to be able to figure out, how do I sit with that emotion and not run away from it and allow myself to be a little bit embarrassed, right? I wish I could go back and tell myself that. Honestly, within a couple of days, I just bailed out of the whole thing. I was done, right? I couldn't even stand to go back. And so I just didn't. I found another job and just didn't go back after a while, which I'm not super proud of, but also, again, being kind to myself, I get it. So that's the thing, right? And so here is the single question that I think everybody needs to know to keep in your back pocket when you know that you need a little bit of self-compassion in your life. The question is this: what would I tell a close friend in this situation? Particularly somebody who you really cared about, who you knew was feeling the exact same way that you feel right now, right? I wish that I could go back and talk to my younger self and say, hey man, that's super embarrassing. Totally fair. Just remember, everybody screws up. It is what it is. You just, learn your lessons and move on, right? Don't worry too much about it. Anybody who is not going to extend that to you, anybody who is going to make a big deal about this thing to you, is somebody that you probably don't need to care about their opinion about you anyways, because clearly they're not really caring about you either. Nobody is going to see a mistake that you've made and just say, well, you're an idiot, get out of my life. Like, you would never do that to somebody else. So why would you say that to yourself? So that's self-compassion. If you like this video, please do all the like cool social media things, the thumbs up, the likes, the subscribe. Actually, please do subscribe. And also, if you are in the Edmonton area, I do in-person therapy. Go to rechargepsychology.com. Also, if you are just in Alberta in general, feel free to, I do virtual therapy across the province as well. So rechargepsychology.com is where you can find all the stuff. I'm still polishing up everything. This is version 1.0 of my set. I'm sure it'll change over time, but thank you so much for watching. Share this with people if you think it's good, if you liked it, if you found it helpful, and I will see you next time.
I would have listened to this video, but your glasses are disgusting.
Okay.